Hello again, everybody, and welcome inside Hoosier Football Tailgate, powered by thehoosier.com. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and we appreciate you joining us here tonight as we continue our four-part series previewing the 2026 Indiana football schedule. Last week, we started with the opening three games of the season: North Texas, Howard, and Western Kentucky, two Group 5s and a FCS program to start off the 2026 season. And those games will allow Indiana to establish its identity, develop some depth, and prepare for what really matters, because now the Big Ten begins, and this is where the seasons are going to be defined. Indiana opens conference play at home against a Northwestern team before traveling on the road to Rutgers and then heading out west to Nebraska. They're in Lincoln, Nebraska, for what I believe may be the first true measuring stick for this Indiana team come the 2026 season. Indiana, of course, last played Nebraska 2 seasons ago at home in front of a big noon kickoff crowd that saw Indiana basically dominate from start to finish in a 56-7 beating of the Cornhuskers. And that is what makes this stretch so interesting, is the expectations around Indiana football have changed. A few years ago, opponents looked at Indiana as a program trying to find its footing. Now, they see a program that has expectations. They see a program that has proven it can compete at the highest level. They see a program that is recruiting at a different level, and they see a program led by third-year head coach Curt Cignetti that believes it belongs among the top teams in the Big Ten. With the success comes a different challenge for the Indiana Hoosiers. You no longer surprise anybody. Every opponent gets your best shot. Every conference game carries a little bit more weight. Every week becomes a test of preparation, physicality, and consistency. And that begins with the Northwestern Wildcats. The Wildcats will come into Bloomington as Indiana's first Big Ten opponent of the season. The Hoosiers will be expected to win that game and probably heavily favored. But as every coach understands, expectations and results are two different things. Then a trip out east to Rutgers out in New Jersey is never an easy task. Greg Schiano has built a program around toughness and discipline and has always presented a physical football team. Rutgers wants to make games uncomfortable. They want to shorten the game, create turnovers, and make every possession matter to the opposing team that comes in to Rutgers' home field. Then comes out a trip out to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers under the tutelage of Matt Rule. And in this one, I have circled this first true road test, the first environment where Indiana will have to handle adversity. A large crowd, as Lincoln always sells out, making it tough on an opponent coming in there. And this will be the first opportunity to prove this program can travel and win against a talented Big Ten opponent. The last 2 times these teams met, Indiana dominated Nebraska during a big noon kickoff in Bloomington in 2024, as I stated earlier, but this time it's different. This time Indiana walks into Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, a place with tremendous tradition, a place where Nebraska fans will definitely be ready, because they have not forgotten the 24 shellacking they got in Bloomington, a place where Indiana will have to earn every yard, and a place that Indiana, I believe, in this game tells a lot about the 2026 Hoosiers. Can they handle that moment? Can they execute when the environment changes? And can they win the fourth quarter? Think of this. The last time Indiana won in Lincoln was back in 2019, where Ramsey ended up throwing for like 350 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 38-31 victory for the Hoosiers out there. But prior to that 2019 game, the last time Indiana had won in Lincoln, the year was 1959, some 2 decades earlier. So you can see that Nebraska will present its own challenge for the Hoosiers heading out there in the 2026 season. These are the questions championship teams always have to answer. Tonight, we're going to break down all three matchups. We'll look at the opponents, their strengths, their weaknesses, their returning players, and keys Indiana must control. Plus, we'll have Coach Griff's 5 headlines that matter, including the biggest stories coming out of the SEC media days. We'll get to that in a second, as my blood pressure got a little higher today reading some of the things that were said on X, or formerly known as Twitter, the future of college football governance, the next week's Big Ten Media's Days, and Indiana's historic 5-star commitment in Monshawn Sales, and the latest developments surrounding Michigan. On top of that commitment last Friday, the Hoosiers got a big 4-star commitment at quarterback out of Massachusetts in the 28 class. We'll talk about that as well. And then later we'll head into the video room, where this week we will break down 2 other concepts that Indiana relied on last year for efficiency in their run game, and also to provide some physicality to their football team with the power and counter game. We'll look at how those plays worked, why they stressed defenses, and why these concepts became critical when Indiana faces big team defensive fronts. 3 conference games, 2 road trips, and a championship standard. And that will get us off to the Big Ten conference season getting underway here in a short minute. But again, tonight, if you could hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, hit that notification bell, we greatly appreciate it. As well as if you have a chance to visit the Fanatic store for the different storefronts that I have set up there. Any purchase at that store, we do receive a little bit of a commission. We try to put that back into all things here at the tailgate. And think about this, the game after at Nebraska, which will end that 3-game kickoff to the season, Indiana will come back home to what may be the biggest game of the year back in Bloomington, when the Ohio State Buckeyes will visit Memorial Stadium in what should be a huge showdown for in the Big Ten. So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the headlines that are gripping the headlines at this at this point in time. And we'll start out at the SEC Media Days, as they've just concluded there today. Of course, today they had Lane Kiffin from LSU. They had Sark from Texas kind of finish it up. We'll get to some of their comments here in a second. Just to remember, if you have a question about anything, please feel free to put that into the chat. We'll try to get it up on the screen as much as possible. And thanks for those guys that are coming with us right now, Tim and Caleb. Coach, I agree. They might be looking ahead to that Ohio State game the next week of the 17th. Well, that's the thing that gets me a little concerned, having to travel to Nebraska. And hopefully they're not peeking ahead, which I don't think SIG will let them. But we'll talk about that. And yes, we'll talk about this young man, Lucas Prock, the quarterback out of the 28 class, a 4-star who committed today, following up a commitment from 5-star Indiana native and Lawrence North High School senior, Monshawn Sales, here in a little bit. But at the SEC Media Days this week, Greg Sankey has declared that the SEC still remains the strongest football conference, top to bottom. They feel that their conference schedule versus any top-heavy conference is better and stronger, as they pointed to strength of schedule a multitude of times this week. And as well as anything, the other thing they added to the docket, so everybody knew, the SEC will jump to 9 conference games this year, a criticism that they were only playing 8 a year ago. And then scheduling in the middle of the season a team like Wofford, or, one of the lower FCS teams, to come into Alabama or LSU to play a game that at the end of the year was more to give their second and third teamers the reps and rest their first team guys before they finished with their last 2 weeks of the season. But today, it definitely did not disappoint with some of the conversations that dominated throughout media day. And one big one was the fact that um, Nick Saban was a part of this broadcast today. And I made a comment on Twitter today because if you listen to Coach Saban, and believe me, I have tremendous respect for Coach Saban, just like any coach would. He is definitely the GOAT of college football and has been a dominant figure for college football for years and years and more to come. Now a ESPN game day analyst, but today he kept talking about the fact that the Big Ten team has won 3 more national championships, and this all talk about the Big Ten being better. The reality in his mind is that they've had one better team where he felt the SEC was better top to bottom overall, and went on to keep talking about that point and making it sound like that conversational piece was coming from the Big Ten conference and fellow fans and people such as myself. Well, here's the thing that I kind of said on X this afternoon about this scenario. I simply said, this is not a Big Ten talking point. This was an SEC talking point saying that because the Big Ten had won 3 years in a row was a excuse making for the SEC about their tough schedule and the fact that they were all beat up by the time the college football playoffs rolled around and the bowl season. Well, the fact of the matter is when the games counted on the field, whether it be the college football playoffs, whether it be the bowl season, the SEC was nowhere to be found. And they didn't have a monopoly on teams that were beat up at the end of the year. Every team is beat up at that time of the year. I don't care where you play, whether it's the SEC, the Big Ten, the metro leagues of high school football throughout the country. Everybody at that time is beat up. The other thing that got my blood pressure up a little bit, and then I'll move on after this, Nick Saban kept saying we in his commentary with ESPN. He hasn't coached in the SEC for 2 years, but he still refers to them as we, as if he's a part of it. Well, he's not a part of it. And I kept wondering when the mothership was going to pull him aside and say, hey, coach, it may be better to refer to the SEC as that and not we, because then it gives this air of bias as the ESPN broadcaster of the SEC when you start referring to we all the time. It's not a we. Nick hasn't been in coaching for 2 years. I understand he still has an office at Alabama, and I understand that every Saturday he's going to talk about the SEC in a light when it comes to the college football playoffs. But it's not a we anymore. And I understand that's probably harder than thing to break your habit of. But when you're trying to make a point talking about we as their best teams top to bottom, right, compared to the Big Ten, he was making that, comment about we. Well, that to me is not very smart on his part or ESPN's part when they want to break away from the quote unquote biased network process in this whole matter. So that got me kind of started. But this thing about the Big Ten winning the last 3 years and not yada, yada, yada had nothing to do with the Big Ten. It had everything to do with the SEC trying to point out some stupid fact over the last 2 years about the SEC and their schedule and who they played and who they didn't play, leading to them to have this atrocious postseason record. And the fact of the matter was they hadn't been to the national championship game in 3 years. And so, yeah, the Big Ten had the best team in the college football. Now, if that means it equates to conference, then so be it. But the fact of the matter is, when it came time to put the ball down in between the white lines, buckle it up and hit each other, the SEC did not perform well, whether it was the championship game, whether it was a semifinal game, or the Duke Mayonnaise Bowl. The fact of the matter is they were horrible in the bowl season and not very good in the college football playoffs. Well, that has nothing to do with who you played or what you didn't get in or who you got in versus those type of things, as Lane Kiffin cried about today, as did Sark cried about it again today as well. Look, don't lose to teams you're not supposed to lose and you'll be fined. But when you lose to Florida, Sark, I'm sorry. Just as, it doesn't no one wants to hear about, well, you beat Texas A&M and M and you beat so and so. Well, you shouldn't have lost to Florida the week before. So, enough of that and I will move on because as you can see my blood pressure got a little high. The politicking that's happening now is atrocious and it goes hand in hand with Sankey's comments about the SEC thinking of breaking away if the governance of the NCAA cannot be worked out or the Protect College Sports Act cannot be ratified in some way. The SEC is preparing as if they're going to take their ball and run. So be it. Take your ball, go form your own league, play 10 games against each other, and the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12 will have their own fun doing a national playoff, and they will exclude the SEC from being a part of it. But again, that's enough of the talking season for me. It's going to be interesting to see how this all heads out next week with the Big Ten media days next week to get some of the conversations of what happened at the SEC or the ACC media days because the Big Ten gets to go last. The other thing outside of the governor's point, the discussion basically centers around couple of topics: the NIL, transfer rules, enforcement, and revenue distribution. As we know, the Big Ten and the SEC get the biggest cut of the pie because of their contract television wise and some other things. But they basically want some type of cap and some ways to enforce things without the NCAA having to be go to court every time that they try to enforce a rule. And I happen to agree with that aspect of things. You got to get away from this. But to say that you're going to go take off and go form your own league, I doesn't think it doesn't help the situation, in my opinion. Are we watching something that's going to start a new era of college football in terms of governance? I hope not. I hope the NCAA can be that governing body. I hope that we can get some type of legislation through that provides the guardrails for teams to abide by. But right now, college football is on the most level playing field that it's been in its ever existence because it would only benefit the true blue bloods of college football, Alabama, LSU. But now there are teams across the country that have an equal opportunity to be a potential national champion, just like Indiana did under Coach Signetti. Next week, Big Ten Media Days kick off July 28th through the 30th up in Chicago, Illinois. Indiana will make its appearance on Thursday, July the 30th. Coach Signetti, I'm sure, will give off his expectations entering year 3, talk about the returning players, the Big Ten championship expectation, and the college football playoffs. All that coverage will be held under the Big Ten, on the Big Ten network, but as well as the Hoosier.com. We will have wall-to-wall coverage of that Big Ten media day, especially July the 30th, when the Indiana Hoosiers will be on the docket there in Chicago. Last thing we'll cover here is the 2 commitments that Indiana has received, not just between Friday with Monshawn Sales, but the quarterback out of Massachusetts, who just committed today in all of this. And I think he's going to be a pretty good ball player, according to a lot of the publications that are out about him. And I'm trying to pull up his data here, if I can find it real quick. Hopefully I can, or maybe I won't. But, this young man is a good-looking kid, 6'2". He's probably 190 pounds. Again, Indiana getting this commitment from Lucas Prock is a good kickoff to 2028, as well as what Indiana was able to secure Friday with Monshawn Sales on the Pat McAfee show. And again, the brand awareness that Indiana has now is very well represented, not just within the state of Indiana, but throughout uh, the country, as we've seen with some of these kids that are now coming from other states that are not next door to Indiana. So that makes it a nice setup in that respects because of what Indiana has been able to do with that. The last thing here before we move on to our opening game that we'll have for kicking off the Big Ten season, and I'll try to get to some questions that maybe have popped up here. Up at Ann Arbor, Michigan, making news this week. Michigan's leadership there, Board of Trustees, as well as the president of the university, accepted that Ward Manuel, the AD at Michigan, will be stepping down after the 26th calendar year, so after the football season. And this has to do with all the scandal that was happening over the last few years. We had Harbaugh's situation, we had sign stealing, we had Sharon Moore's situation last year with a staffer. And one of those individuals that got caught up in all this was Chris Partridge, one of their assistant coaches, who was the individual that got caught with some sensitive material on a campus computer that he owned in his office. Well, he's amended his lawsuit for wrongful termination to provide information that that Michigan's brass, meaning their AD, president, and other top brass at Michigan, was fully aware of the situation with Coach Moore, as well as this sign stealing allegation that they were aware of before it hit the light of day. So there's going to be some more things come to light on this. So this is going to get very interesting. So you can see why Ward Manuel had no choice to try to put out some of the fire there, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. So this will be a thing that eventually will be resolved because everything as it pertains to Michigan's off the field allegations and such have still remained unresolved when it comes to last year's scandal with Coach Moore and the staffer having an affair that was against the HR playbook per se. So again, Michigan finds themselves at the top of the food chain when it comes to some of the stuff that has been occurring here over the last few weeks with that. Let's see if we got any questions here that I may have missed before we continue on. Money can make you say anything. That's pretty darn true. Coach Saban doesn't live in reality. If he did, he would still be coaching. Yeah, that could be a common occurrence. I like Coach Saban. Don't get me wrong. You're saying we, and you haven't been a part of it for 2 years, and you're an analyst for the SEC, not the SEC, but ESPN, not even the SEC network. So having him on there for all that, I don't think was very good by ESPN to allow that to happen there in Tampa this week. But again, let's see. The SEC is hurt because everyone is paying players now and need to get over it. They were paying players long before it was legal. Well, everybody can do it now and level playing field for everyone. Yeah, absolutely. Everything's got a level playing field to it now, even though they would prefer it go back to the other way when it's all said and done. Well, let's kick off here the start of the conference season for the Indiana Hoosiers. First up is the Northwestern Wildcats coming to Bloomington on a Friday night, September the 25th, I believe. Right now, the early line has Indiana being a 25.5 point favorite in all this. And when you look at this team from Northwestern, um, again, they are a team that um, has very disciplined players. They play physical. Um, they do have players that can make some great plays in space. So they do have some athletes. Again, Indiana, went up to Northwestern there on the lake, got a great win on the road. But if you look at their stats from last year, offensively, they were tied for 79th with, I think, 23 and a 4.4 game, a little under 350 yards total offense last year. Third down efficiency, 36.3. Red zone touchdown percentage was about 79. And they average 1.6 turnovers per game. Defensively speaking, 19 points a game, 330 yards of total defense on the year. Teams, threw the ball fairly well against them. But, their defense was the strength of their team a year ago, in my opinion, and pretty darn good at it in a lot of different statistical categories. Now, this year, they hired Chip Kelly as their new offensive coordinator coming into Evanston to lead that offense there, which I thought was a huge hire. Chip Kelly was the coordinator when Ohio State won the national championship 2 years ago. They got in the portal and got Aiden Childs for the quarterback from Michigan State, who we all know has great ability. He's always played pretty decently against Indiana. But they also got some other players on their roster coming back that a couple really good wideouts in Elgin and Wild. Both of those guys, I think, were their two leading receivers. They got a really good tight end. And I'm really interested to see how Aiden Childs does in a Chip Kelly type of offense, especially if they go the no huddle variety, of which Chip is, has been there in the past philosophically. And a guy that you have like Aiden, who can not only throw it, but can be a threat running it, and an offense that Chip Kelly would design around him, you can see where there could be some very strong concerns for any defensive coordinator going up against this Northwestern offense. Defensively has always been solid. Even when Fitzgerald was there, they got a solid linebacking crew back. They got some older guys coming back on the team. And I do think it's one of those things that while this game Indiana should win and do it in commanding fashion, this is one of those games that you don't want to start putting a check next to it, because they're a type of team that can come into Bloomington and cause you some heartburn real quick because of what they may be able to do with what they have on an athletic standpoint. They got a new offensive system and a new quarterback who has Big Ten experience. It'll determine how quickly Childs gets up to speed in that offense. But for Indiana, the keys for them to win a game, as it was last year, they got to be a defense that stops the run, makes an offense become one-dimensional, and then offensively, ball security, establish the balanced offense, score points when they have the opportunity to put points on the board, and especially when they're inside the red zone, which Indiana did quite well last year. And those are the things that Indiana will have to continue to do with Josh Hoover at the quarterback position, with a very talented group of receivers and running backs behind him that he'll be able to distribute the ball to very frequently, handing it off or throwing it. So again, this Northwestern team, you do not want to, think that that's going to be an easy cakewalk, even though they're 25 and a point favorite as of now. But if I had to give them a grade and what I would say Sig looks at them, they're a very good, solid B minus team because of their discipline they have on defense. They always have solid special teams and an offense that can be seen as improving, and not only who they got running it, but also what athletes they'll have running out there on the field. That is a very good opener for Indiana from a Big Ten standpoint, as is their next week game when they head out to New Jersey to take on Greg Schiano's Rutgers Knights out in New Jersey. Now, this game is one of those games when you've placed a Greg Schiano team, and Indiana did 2 seasons ago when they came into Bloomington, came from behind and basically broke Indiana's heart, because that was a game I think Indiana had a chance to become bowl eligible. And Rutgers came in and came back and won that game against Indiana on that day. But Greg Schiano is going to have a physical team. He's going to have a defense that will always be tough. And again, when you look at statistics on it, they didn't give up much points last year from a defensive perspective, only about 16, 17 points a game. And their total defense was very respectable, only having given up 295 yards total defense a year ago. Now, offensively, you can see that's where the problem lied. Only 20 points a game, only 307 yards of total offense. And when you look at it from pass offense, pass defense, not very good. 103rd in the P4 rankings and 82nd in their rush offense. So again, this is a offense that struggled a year ago. 31.3 on third downs, conversion downs, and they had about 1.2 turnovers a game and close to 2 sacks a game. So last year's Scarlet Knights team, where their defense was good enough, their offense really was not able to move the football very well at all. And they lost a lot of field position battles in 2025 that really cost them with everything. Again, got some guys out of the portal. They do have some returning players that I do think are going to be pretty darn good, especially on their defense. They got a lot of seniors coming back. This is going to be a little bit of an older team, a little bit of unknown. This will be one of those games where Indiana will have to kind of see where Rutgers stacks up after those first 4 weeks of the season. Again, FPI right now, I think, is about a 92% chance Indiana winning. But that's today. I mean, there's a lot of things that get left out of that aspect of it. If I look at Rutgers as a team coming into the season, I would say they're about a C+ type of team. They're a little bit better than average on paper, but I think after the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, Indiana will have a better barometer on this Rutgers team. I've always had great respect for Schiano and what he did at Ohio State before heading back out to Rutgers, where he had a lot of success there in the old Big East days. And now he's back there trying to put back together the type of program that he had there years ago when Rutgers was a pretty well-respected team in the Big East that was highly ranked at one time. So again, not a great environment, or not a great, but a tough environment to go play in once again. And after coming off a game against Rutgers, heading out to, off of Northwestern, now you head out east to take on Greg Schiano and his Scarlet Knights. And Rutgers is a team, too, that can give teams fits because you may not get a full feeling of how good they are off the tape. You'll see things that you just kind of cross your eyes at because you would think, man, they look a lot better than what their record indicates. And that's kind of what this Rutgers team is to me. They're going to look better than maybe what they portray perception wise heading into that game. And for Indiana, again, if they go out and do the things that they're capable of doing, and Josh Hoover gets off to a solid start with a run game and a pass game that is balanced, and a defense that we know right now that can have a chance to be as good as last year's team, as elite at least, then they should go out to New Jersey and take care of business. But you never discount what Coach Schiano can put together for one game, even if it's that one game against Indiana heading into 2026 season. Well, hey, we're going to step aside, take a break. I need to get a swig of water here to get my voice back with me, as I've got my hoarseness back in my voice because my blood pressure got up because of Coach Saban and the SEC earlier. We're going to step aside and hear some things from the Hoosier.com as well as Fanatics. Back with more Hoosier Tailgate right after these messages.
Hoosier fans, listen up. If you're serious about the Hoosiers, the Hoosier.com is where you need to be. We're talking insider reporting, film breakdowns, recruiting, and transfer portal coverage you won't get anywhere else. And when you subscribe, it's more than just one site. You also get full access to Rivals, On3, and The Athletic at no extra cost. Right now, you can jump in for just $1. Then it renews annually at the regular rate. $1. Total access. No brainer. Head to thehoosier.com and join today.
Indiana football fans, get your officially licensed Indiana gear today at the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics storefront. Jerseys, hoodies, hats, collectibles, tailgate gear, and championship apparel, all in one place. Look for the link in the description to the Hoosier Tailgate storefront and gear up today.
Welcome back here to the Hoosier Tailgate, live on the Hoosier.com. We appreciate you joining us here tonight. If you're here with us live, by all means, we thank you for being here. If you're catching this a little bit later and you came in late, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the like and notification bell. Much appreciated there. And if you listen to us on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, by all means, please give us a rating on those platforms as well. Much appreciated. Well, we're into our last breakdown here of this 3-game set after Indiana would have taken on Rutgers and Northwestern to kick off the Big Ten slate for 2026, and what may be the first test for this Indiana Hoosier football team heading out to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on Matt Rule and his Cornhuskers, in a game that for a lot of people in Nebraska, coaches, players, are going to have the vivid memory of 2024 when they came to Bloomington and got embarrassed. And if you remember back to that game, even Matt Rule was thoroughly embarrassed by what transpired that day, because a lot of people didn't feel like he had his Nebraska team prepared, where a lot of people understood it wasn't about them being prepared. It was being that Indiana was a legit team to contend for the Big Ten title that year under the leadership of Curtis Rourke and crew. Unfortunately, Curtis ended up getting hurt, I believe, in this game, if I'm not mistaken, because that's when he hurt his finger and led to him having to sit out a game and Taven Jackson coming in against Washington. But this Nebraska team will be a team that will have a new look on defense. Same look on offense with Dana Holgorsen leading the way. Dylan Raiola is no longer with Nebraska. He has transferred out to Oregon, where he will more than likely be the backup to Dante Moore for this year. So they'll start a new quarterback next year. So he's not there. That's a mistake that I must have overlooked on the chart there. But this is a defense that has not maybe lived up to the hype that Nebraska fans are accustomed to when you talk about the black shirts and things of that nature. And this is a year that Matt Rule really needs to have a breakthrough year. I don't think there's any question that there was disappointment all around last year. There was some turmoil, led to some changes in the offseason. But when you look at their defense, even though last year their defense was pretty decent at times, their offense would lack and so forth and so on. So you get a lot of things with this Nebraska team with Greg Schiano. With Matt Rule. Dana Holgorsen is a very good coordinator. He likes to throw the ball around a little bit, but I don't know necessarily if they're going to have that type of offense this year. And last year, when they couldn't run the football, that led to putting their defense in some bad situations, that them giving up games late in the second half. And that led to the frustration that set in. So now you come into this season with this Nebraska team needing to have a breakthrough year under Coach Rule, and they're going to have the talent to do that. They're going to have the bodies to do that. They're still a very, I would say, respected team when you talk about Nebraska football as a whole. And it is a tough place to go win in Lincoln, Nebraska on any Saturday, as that stadium, if I'm not mistaken, becomes like the largest city in the state of Nebraska when it terms of what that holds attendance-wise there in Lincoln. And I said that Indiana won their last in 2019 in a game they won by 7, 38-31. And it was kind of one of those games. It was a little bit back and forth, and Peyton Ramsey made some plays and threw for like 350 yards, 2 touchdowns. But prior to that game, Indiana hadn't won in Lincoln since 1959. And you're talking a lot of games between then and now that Indiana just never had the team to go out to Lincoln and win. Well, now they got a team that's going to go out there that's going to be highly rated in the preseason, as they are now, including the Big Ten. You got a team in Nebraska that's going to definitely remember the game 2 years ago. Probably will be on a loop on their TVs and big screens all week long, reminding them of the final score of that game and how embarrassed they were. That game ultimately led to a downward trend for Nebraska because they were in a state of shock when they left Bloomington. They were in a state of shock, and I'm not sure they got out of it for a week or two. And that was one of those things that is I think Matt Rule has to have a pretty darn good year, as Tim has pointed out here, and saying that he's basically at 500 right now, heading into his 4th season. He did get a contract extension, which had a lot of people scratching their heads last year. But I look at it this way. They've gone through some coaches here, and they're trying to give Coach Rule every opportunity to provide stability and build a football team back up, because let's face it, it's really been decimated, ever since they made the changes 3 or 4, 5, 6 years ago. And when they let Bo Pelini go because of some of his antics in terms of treatment of players and things of that nature, they've really struggled to get any sense of a winning culture back in Lincoln since then. So I think they're hoping that Matt Rule's the guy that can do it. He is a great coach. He's got a good defensive mind. He's got the people that he trusts, after you made some changes. And this will be a game that for Indiana is sandwiched in between, you know, the week after when Ohio State comes into Bloomington. So this is one of those games you better not be peeking ahead or you'll come out like Nebraska did 2 years ago, embarrassed, because I guarantee you they are going to be fit to be tied and ready to play in that ball game when Indiana gets out there here in the month of end of September. I'm sorry, in October when they head out there. And here we go. Let's see here. All right. Penn State Sports Talk. What we got here? Glad to have you come aboard. Be with us here tonight. Indiana's out of conference schedule is terrible. Okay. Washington, Ohio State, and Michigan, the only difficult games for Indiana this year. Well, those are bona fide games that Indiana will have on their schedule. But if I remember right, Penn State's not playing Indiana this year, and they're not playing Ohio State, if memory serves me correct. But that's just the way the schedule falls. And, it is what it is when it comes to that. They played two P5 schools and two teams in North Texas, who was a bowl team last year. I think they were 12-2. So it's not like they're playing the Sisters of the Poor either. So every Big Ten team, for the most part, is going to play games that at the beginning of the year, that is going to allow them to get off to the best possible start as humanly possible. So again, just like last year when people were talking about Penn State and how horrible they were in terms of their season last year, don't understand that Penn State was in the top 5 a year ago at this time, and some picked to win it all, and they just didn't get crappy overnight. They still had a really good team all of last year. So again, it is what it is when it comes to that. You see us losing 2 of those games. Michigan is a loss, and you will split Ohio State and Washington. Okay, fair enough. I don't see it that way, but hey, we play USC as well. And Penn State, as Tim points out, has Marshall and Buffalo and Temple. So I think Penn State has a lot more favorable schedule this year than what Indiana has. And it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Campbell comes out and has a great year. I wouldn't be a bit surprised of that, because I think that was probably one of the better hires last year, after it was leading and looking at as being a debacle up until they did hire Matt Campbell away from Iowa State. And they saved their hiring season with a great hire, in my opinion. And I think because he brought some bona fide players to Penn State, mixed in with what Penn State has coming back, I think Penn State has an excellent chance to have a great year under Matt Campbell's first year. And most of it's because of the schedule that they have in front of them is a very doable schedule. So this is going to be a debate for years about who's going to play who and when they're going to play them. And when you got 18 teams in a league, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter that who you play, because it's going to change so desperately each and every year on how things rotate out in that respect. Yeah, Hoover's not he's a quarterback that's thrown for over 10,000 yards in his years at TCU. And I think that under his system here at Indiana, it will be a pretty darn good one for him to be in. So we'll find out. Again, games are played between the white lines and not on the bulletin boards before the year starts. So we'll find out and see what all happens. But that will be one of those things that we'll have to wait and see what all happens. But we appreciate your coming in tonight and sharing your thoughts and feelings about Big Ten season. We appreciate anybody that comes by at any time. So thanks for coming by, and best luck to the Nittany Lions this year. Jump over to now. We talked about last week Indiana's inside zone play. This week we're going to talk a little bit about their power run game that they had last year that was pretty good, and a play that Indiana had a lot of success with, especially with Hemby and Black, two guys that could beat up at bully it up in there and get you 5 yards about every time they touched it on a play like this. And Indiana did quite well. And this is one of those things that I like to see Indiana run more of because of the different fronts you're going to see and people bringing bodies. It gives you a chance to block down, kick out type of thing. So again, this is one of those offensive plays to me that gives you a chance to have physicality at the point of attack. Inside zone, outside zone is more of a finesse play. But when you talk about power and counter, you're talking more downhill, coming off the ball, blocking and double teaming and kicking out when you think about it. When you look at this play, and we're going to look at a couple of them here. When you think about it, let's see if we can get it going here. All right, there we go. Of course, this was last year early on in the season against Old Dominion, and we're seeing a Old Dominion play a version of the 3-3 defense with their backers here rolled up on the outside. That guy and that guy are the outside backers. This guy is kind of like a rover position for them. And again, you're going to see Indiana do a great job of blocking down and here kicking out because of where that backer is. And this is Hemby running the ball and getting a good 7-8 yards on a play where you can get down and at it at the point of attack. But when you see Indiana block this, you're going to get a lot of blocking down here to wash the play down, working guys to the next level. Guys picking off and then him pulling for that first guy on the outside. And this is a good play because you're blocking the gaps. You're protecting the inside gaps when you block down like this. And it helps you a lot, especially when you're playing teams. This guy's in a 4-eye. You got to head up. And normally in these fronts, you're going to get guys moving. So again, this is a type of play that protects the gaps to the inside and allows your offensive lineman to come off the ball when teams are messing around with it. Now, Indiana, what they like to do with it all, and they didn't do it on this particular play, is they will also attach RPO plays. And this is where blocking on the perimeter comes such a big deal here. Like here, Surratt, even though it wasn't a great block, it did enough to get in the way of that defender. Again, another power play here. Good first down and play. Indiana did a great job of using motion, different formations to disguise what they were wanting to do. And again, you see this kind of like what I call a double eagle, and we'll look at it from the end zone here in a second. But again, blocking down to inside gaps, looking for the nearest run lane, and good job by Omar Cooper going in to dig out that safety. And Surratt getting a block here on the outside as well, and allowing the running back, again, Hemby, with a good 8-9 yard play. But you'll see them as they go in motion where these guys jump to the inside, and you're going to get a lot of good blocking down at the point of attack with this. to help yourself with this type of play. And you can just see him follow it and hit it maybe a little wider than you want it. But again, he's reading what the offensive lineman's doing. And remember, a good running back makes offensive linemen right all the time. And this is really good. Great job by Nowakowski at the point of attack as well. So that was their power play a year ago. The next one that we'll talk about here is counter. Now, this one you can see you're going to pull guard and tackle. And again, this is kind of like student body left or student body right, and the same philosophy. When you think about this play, it's a block down, kick out, pull through now. Now you're looking to kick out, end man on line, and pull your backside tackle through. And with the quarterback on these, when you look at it, especially on these open fronts, this is where you may attach a read concept to it, or in some respects, an RPO to it. So Indiana has a way to always protect their run game with either doing quarterback reads or RPOs. And they do it as good as anybody in the country when you think about the productivity they've had out of the last few years with this type of offense. But again, we'll take a couple look at them here early on against Old Dominion, and then when they went out to Oregon and had great success. Again, 3-2 front, using a wide set to really help declare the box. This is a 5-man box. And I always say, if you got a 5-man box, you better be able to run it pretty darn good, because you should have more numbers than them at the point of attack. And again, the block down, kick out, good patience here by the running back. He may be a little quick, and he follows his lineman, makes the play. And here's where Surratt doesn't get the block that he needs to get. And he almost gets BB hurt because he doesn't get across that DB there. And hopefully we get this guy back, this BB Jr. this year, because you can see right here, he has got some great quickness. But again, up front, block down, block back, because you got to secure all this all the way back to that defensive end. And Coogan does a great job. And you're going to try to get up to that next level, wash down, get that guy there. He's reading that first puller, and he's going to pull around. And you can see how this develops into that play where you're going to secure the gaps to the inside and put yourself in a position to protect the running back and get the ball to the perimeter. And this is a pretty darn good job here. But you can see right there, he really had two ways to go, because he could have popped it right up in here, because this is a good job by, I think that's Smith, Carter, on the block. He does a great job there at the point of attack. And again, if we can get that young man back, BB Jr. this year, to go along with Martin and then Turbo Richard, again, it should be a good 3-man backfield. Here's against the 4-man front. Again, it's a 5-man front in here. 5 guys in the box per se, if I can draw it again. But Indiana does a good job here in how they got it structured, blocking back on the 3. Now this is where you would potentially put in a read for this guy coming off the edge here. And, the bottom guy down here at the bottom. But Indiana does a great job of kicking out here, getting up through there. And again, Roman Hemby ran these plays pretty darn good. He was big, strong, and this was probably his best game last year. It was against Oregon. He had a lot of great runs, powerful runs, and you can kind of see here with Indiana now, again, boom, boom, and you're pulling these guys to kick out. Kick out again. And you're going to see where you could put a read on that guy so that if he comes hard down, then you got a chance to get him blocked. But Coogan was really good. Man, he was so good at center. This is a great job. He essentially causes blocks too because he holds the end up enough that Hemby's by him already. And he's not going to be able to make the tackle there. Benson's got to get going. Of course, he was beat up a lot last year. He played hurt quite a bit. But again, just a good hard run. It's a hard-nosed play. Indiana needs to run as much as they can next year of those plays. And again, I like it because it protects your inside gaps. It gives you a chance to block down and pull. Misdirection plays with defenses. You can add things to it, different run combinations, quarterback reads, RPOs, speed sweeps off of it as well. And there's a lot you can do with a play like that where it can lead to a lot of positive, efficient plays that you need to have on those first and second downs. And then if you get to that third and medium or short, you can run a play like this and get a first down, which Indiana did quite a bit last year when teams were expecting them to throw it. They were able to do this and get positive yardage off of it. So again, Indiana run-wise last year did a great job. Coach Bosted does a great job, of course. And again, this offensive line got a good nucleus back. And I do think there'll be a team that can run the ball efficiently again and help a guy like Josh Hoover not have to throw it 40 times a game like he did at TCU because they couldn't run the ball very good and they had a piss-poor defense. So that will help him in his development and be able to come into an offense that fits him with the help of having a run game and a solid defense. So, but thanks again tonight. We'll continue on next week. We'll review the Big Ten Media Days because next Thursday, that will wrap up with Indiana being the last one there on the 30th. We'll continue on with the series with our next three, which will probably be the three toughest stretches of games for Indiana. We'll sit down and talk about those, especially the first one up, Ohio State next week. But again, Indiana's Big Ten schedule kicks off with three good ones and two of the three on the road. But Indiana could be heading into that Ohio State game. Very, very well could be undefeated heading into that game there in Memorial Stadium, which will be the biggest game to hit Bloomington in quite some time. So, again, Northwestern will test the discipline, Rutgers the toughness, and Nebraska will test our maturity as a football team. But I do believe Indiana gets off to a solid 3-0 start in conference play next year, this Big Ten season coming up. And again, it is proving this program can handle the expectations and the standard that has now been set in Bloomington. Now the Hoosiers have to meet it, becoming the hunted rather than the hunter. And again, appreciate everybody being here with us today. Tune in tomorrow. I will be again with our friend Jim Coyle on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll catch that off of YouTube tomorrow. And again, we will see you next week right here for more Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we will see you next Thursday night.